Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this program. Tonight we just want to follow up on the ZiG that has been issued. But before we go on to that one, we'll just want to have a quick comment on yesterday's story. In yesterday's story, we're discussing members of the apostolic faith who were arrested and accused of abusing their children. And we did say that the church has become a bastion of criminality, in the sense that the church leaders have become so dominant and they've been dictating to their membership. We've got tonight a video clip of one sect celebrating receiving a car from Chivayo, a businessman who is connected with the ruling party Zanu PF. We just quickly watch it and then we comment on it.
Chairman we Vapositora for ED mazvabamosi.
Makorokoto eBabaobey, Baba Mapranga. Makorokoto munhu waMwari. Makorokoto neFord Ranger nyowani iyi. Mabasa enyu akanaka aonekwa nokushanda kwamakaita muchitsigira mutungamiri wenyika President ED Mnangagwa namai neZanu PF.
Tichitenda sei wiki neuchivayo nechipo chavatipa ichi Vabaobey murambe muchitumika, murambe muchishanda nevakuru zvakanaka.
Tinoda kutenda zvakanyanya sewiki tinokutendai dai Mwari vakuitirai zvakanaka. Marangarira vaApostle for ED zuva ranhasi tiri kupembera, tiri kufara zvikuru zvamaitira Vabaobey. Vabaobey
Benjamin, what's your view?
Good day to you all. Yeah, well, it's a good gesture giving somebody a motor vehicle. What I'm against is, there should be a separation between politics and the church. That's one thing for sure. Yes, I understand, everybody is entitled to have a political affiliation, whether they are within the church, but not within, whilst you are doing God's work. By them virtually putting on what they are putting on there, it's to show that they are worshiping. So for them now to be doing what they are doing, pasina ningi, it means down with that person. That person is as good as they are dead, Then how do we now separate between church and politics? If politics has now infiltrated the church to such an extent that they say that is holy ground where they are standing on, and they are doing slogans, they are cursing others. Then for me, I think it just spoils the whole thing. Yes, a car, anybody is entitled to be gifted a car. Not entitled, but anybody can be gifted a car, which is a good thing. But the way you do it, that's where I see the wrong in it. Condemning other people first of all, right? it's sad if it's done that way for me.
Well, in this particular case, I think what the listeners should remember here is that 2023 elections were not free, fair, and credible. The election before that, 2018, the same thing. Zanu PF has consistently rigged the elections. So for the church leaders to come out so strongly in support of a leader who is rigging elections is against the grain. The church should be standing for justice, for basic human rights for all people. And yet here we are. These people call themselves Vapositora for ED. In other words, they were taking their church and saying, this church and its members will support Zanu PF. The church membership had no say in it. And even if they did, when the church comes out strongly in support of a regime that is rigging elections, one has got to say there's something wrong with the church. It's bad enough as an individual to be supporting a regime that is oppressive, but to come out as an organization. And this is not the only church that has done so. Many of these apostolic faith sectors have come out in support of Zanu PF. And so has many other Pentecostal churches in Zimbabwe. And their leaders have become incredibly rich from the takings from the poor people, and also from being rewarded by Zanu PF. Many people have received cars, and some have even received farms from the regime. This is totally against the grain. I think one of the problems we have in Zimbabwe is that Zanu PF's corrupting influence has reached literally every corner of society. And the church has not been spared of that. And they keep on celebrating the association with Zanu PF. Clearly shows these are individuals who have been completely hooked and are beyond the peril. I repeat, Zanu PF rigged the elections, blatantly rigged the elections, denying millions of people their right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. SADC and the AU condemned last year's election as a farce. This Zanu PF regime is illegitimate. And therefore, then anyone who continues to celebrate that regime is celebrating illegitimacy. And for that to be coming from church leaders is absurd. Our society has been corrupted to the point where even those who supposedly represent God and are fighting on the side of the downtrodden and oppressed are now abandoning those people to cause up with the ruling elite for selfish ends. That must be condemned. Thank you very much, Benjamin. What do you have to say about the currency, the ZiG?
Well, not much to report. I honestly believe that, as we are going into next week to where our children will be starting to go to school, and there's need for tuition in terms of paying in US dollar and so forth. I think that is when we are going to actually see the true colors. Well, from what I know, also when it comes to school fees, government has said that each and every household is entitled to choose how they wish to go about paying their children's tuition. Because most schools were actually just charging in US dollars, and some were charging in partly, but government has since come out saying that no, that is not the case. Everybody is entitled to pay in whatever currency that they are comfortable with. So I think that was a good move in terms of government coming forward with that initiative. But will it actually be the case? I don't know. So that's one to look out for next week. But in terms of circulation, well, not a few people have actually gotten to get the money. So I suppose the circulation, since it's few, there are few notes. 80 million is not much. I suppose it's going to be hard to get your hands on it, because most people actually use electronic transfers. So I suppose that's another case. But we'll see by the end of next week, or during the week, how it unfolds.
Well, one big interesting development that has already taken place, in fact, is that government has instructed the banks to charge a 2% tax on the foreign currency accounts. So most banks, most individuals woke up yesterday and find that their bank account has gone down. Apparently, this tax has been backdated to August 2022 or something like that. And so, it's a substantial amount of money. But I think this is just the thin end of the wedge. In the past, Zanu PF or the Reserve Bank promised that those with foreign denominated accounts, they will be allowed to keep them, and they will not be converted into the local currency. But when the regime was being pressed for foreign currency, one morning it instructed that the banks would transfer all the foreign currency to the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and the respective accounts will be credited with the equivalent in local currency. I think this tax on the foreign currency account is the thin end of that wedge. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the next move is the foreign currency is overnight changed to local currency, to the ZiG. So that is a reality that we cannot overrule. Like we said in the past, the problem with the ZiG is that as much as the government would want to assure the nation that it is tied to the gold and the foreign currency reserves, the truth of the matter is it is not. And this is a regime that has got the habit of printing money to cover its expenses. So, and also in this particular case, the problems of inflation are not also tied to the problems of bad governance. Those problems are still there. So changing the name of the currency alone without changing the fundamentals is not going to change anything. So what they're trying to do here, as shown on the screen there, putting limits on how much of the local currency you can withdraw, it's a way of trying to control the amount of money, limited, so that as long as the local currency is in short supply, hopefully it will be able to hold its value. But to be quite honest, the main problem you always have here is that as long as people do not trust its ability to hold its value, the minute they get the local currency, they would want to spend it or to buy foreign currency, which is more stable. So the pressure on the ZiG will never go away. And like Benjamin was saying there, I think now that it has been launched and the money is still starting to circulate, all we can say is watch this space. We'll have to wait and see. And I don't think we'll have to wait very long. The pressure on the ZiG is already there. The people do not trust it. And the chaotic way in which it was launched already undermined that currency. And to be quite honest, nobody realistically expected to hold its value, because the weaknesses that undermined all the other currencies in the past are still there. That point we cannot run away from. Thank you very much, Benjamin. Do you want to put in your closing remarks then?
Well, in closing, I honestly, I cannot say I'm actually disheartened by the way the Vapositora operated, in terms of slogans at church, and then while it's even, I mean, the clothes that they're putting, they say, is regalia for church. That's what identifies their church. For them to be doing slogans and passive with this and all that, I just think it's uncalled for. There is supposed to be a separation between church and politics, and unfortunately for them, I wouldn't. So most of them are naive, actually. So it's just to say, but I don't think they will even be bothered about it. So yeah, this is the kind of situation that we have in Zimbabwe, which is also a bit discouraging. But we just keep hoping that one day we will change and mend our ways, and start doing things the right way, and hopefully we can see ourselves out of this mess. That's what I have to say in conclusion.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. My conclusion is that we are not going to see an end to this hyperinflation, to this corruption, to this churches becoming so captured by the politicians to the point of they are now cheerleaders of the regime. We will not see an end of this until we implement the democratic reforms so that we've got free, fair, and credible elections. That is the starting point, the prerequisite for good governance. This Zanu PF regime is doing all these things out of desperation. The regime is desperate to stay in power at all costs. And that cost is to the nation. How long are we going to allow this to happen? This is a question that we have got to ask ourselves again and again. The sheer prospect of Zanu PF rigging the 2028 election should be seriously considered now and not to be only raised a year or two before the said elections. We should raise it now and do something now. At the present moment, to be quite honest, the opposition is willing to go along with this regime. And unless we stop it, that is exactly what is going to happen. Thank you very much, Benjamin, for, for your contribution. And for the listeners, thank you very much for being with us. And I hope you'll be able to join us tomorrow.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.